this is where we got to before. I didn't touch it at all since the end of part 1, and I think that's important because I didn't want to like fix things behind the scenes and then come back with like, oh, so when you weren't watching, I fixed all the problems. That's not fair. I didn't touch it at all so that we can start where we left off, and there are problems, and we'll try to fix them together and figure out what we can do here, and then move forward with it. But this is as far as we got. I have it set up so that it's only playing one viewport at a time, just so that the playback is a little bit smoother. It'd be, if it tried to play all 4, it would be even slower. But this is about where we're at the moment. And this is a super complicated dance move. It is a very, very challenging movement. And I'm just kind of going through what I did in the first part. I'm not going to go over all of it, obviously, but the basics is I was kind of following the ref in multiple views, going from one to the next, and kind of slowly cleaning up the blocking as I went from each view so that it works kind of in real space. And then I also have the perspective view here, and I want to be checking it constantly in world space so that I know that it's working kind of in 3D. I'm not going to cheat too much. I want it to be more real for this type of project. We're not cheating too much and not doing more like you would do cheats in like cartoonier stuff. But in this, you want the lighting to make it feel right and real. And the more that it works in real space, the better it's going to feel from any camera angle, but specifically the camera angle that's chosen anyway. All right, so one thing that I'm noticing is, I mean, the legs are going crazy. I'm going to focus on kind of cleaning up these steps. This is just terrible. I don't know what's going on here. We're going to clean up these steps so that the feet and the body kind of work together. Then I'm going to move on. Okay, that's the plan at the moment. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. If they're about the thing that I'm doing at the moment, Scott said that he'll jump in and make sure that we get to those questions. If they're more general, broad questions about anything at all, perfect. I love answering all sorts of questions. We'll save more of those towards the end, and we'll get to those later. So don't worry if you ask a question and it doesn't get answered right away. So where to begin? I think one thing that's I'm noticing much more now than at the end of the last time was that the difference in the length of the legs between the character and the actor, the reference person, is causing a bit of a discrepancy in some things like this, because this no longer feels the same with what Ahsoka's doing and what he's doing. It does not feel the same to me. What needs to happen is the feet need to be way more spread apart. It's a big step. He's really reaching. It's a lunge almost. And she feels like a very comfortable stride length ahead. And then that just compounds as we're moving here. Their legs are not far apart enough here. And then this step is going to be changed because of that. So I guess I'll start there. Right, and I will do my best to talk while I animate, which just adds another layer of complexity of getting this to work right, because it's super hard to animate alone, but then to add on top of it, explaining what you're doing or what you're thinking or what you're seeing just makes everything that much harder. So what I'm going to start to do here, I guess I want to try to balance this so we can see multiple things at the same time. I'm going to take this, figure out what axis it's on, which that is multiple axes. I want I guess we're gonna have to move in multiple axes. Yeah, it's kind of, this happens all the time too. So it's something to be aware of, is that the direction I want it to head is not in one axis. It is multiple axes. So I'm gonna have to balance X and Z together. So I'm gonna grab X and Z, or just I'll grab all the translates and show you that I'm gonna take this and slide it out more like this. Find out where that is on my graph editor and see that move the blue one up, Z. So I'm just going to slide this up and slide this down to match. There's many other ways to do this. This is not the only way. Oops, I moved some keys. Come on, there we go. That's not the only way to accomplish that task, but that's what I'm going to do right now to make it clear for everybody what I was doing. And I'm also going to then, this is going to affect the left body because I feel like this step is correct with her right foot. This one. I feel like that step is correct, which means that foot is planted correctly, which means this one has to reach much further, which then also means that her torso has to reach much further. So we'll grab this. Same thing, I'm going to just kind of push this in the correct direction and then learn that I didn't push the foot far enough. So this is going to affect all three axes because I also want her a little lower because of that back leg. I want to get the shape of the back leg correct. That's what I'm going to start with. Start with the shape of the back leg. We want it stretched out. I want it to be a more than 90 degrees angle from this point of view. It's an obtuse angle like that. The knee is getting close-ish to the ground. And so those are things that I'm looking at. So that feels pretty good for now. I can always change it later. But I'm going to continue to adjust these things so that everything after that is relative to that. And I think that maybe stops. Yes, stops. Okay, I'll clean that up later. And I have to fix that foot now. So this foot, back to this one. That's not the foot. That's the foot. All right. Oh, I moved this key, but I didn't move these keys, the ones in front of it, when it starts to plant. So I actually want this to be up there to fit what I did before. If all of you were watching closely, I'm sure you already noticed that and realized I was going to run into that problem. And look, I did. All right. So that stride length does feel better now. That feels good. Looking at the shape of this leg and how much it's bent, I think that feels pretty good. It could actually go a little further because the lower leg here is not straight down to the ground like it is on Ahsoka here. It is out in front. So I'll go a little bit further. Like that. And like that. That's probably good. So we'll keep it there. All right. Then, how does that affect the next part? All right. So definitely some knee problems in here. We'll get to that. But the relationship of the planted feet versus the root, the cog, the torso, whatever you want to call this section, feels pretty right. The knees are spread too wide. I'll fix that later. But then the next step, this one, is now much too short, as we already knew was going to happen. Right? And also seems to be maybe the root is moving too far. Just because of the outstretched leg right here. Looking at that. So maybe this is too far. So I'll take, oh, there's a key here. Maybe more like that. And then this has to be further out. That's not the foot. That's the foot. So this one, move that to world. That's probably better. And then another way to do this adjustments thing that I'm doing, I'm actually going to take this. Let's undo that. I undid that fix. So I can show you a slightly different way to do it, which is that I want this foot plant and everything after it to be moved over. So I'm going to take this key and all these keys, and then use this thing with Animbot, the global offset tool, to, you can see it highlighted that section on the timeline. How do I want to move this thing? More like that, I guess. But then from this view, it's hard because the knees are so wonky. We'll try that. Okay. And so now it moved everything that was in that blue section the same amount as what I just moved that one key. So it made those adjustments for me, although it doesn't include that last key. But it's okay, I'll just delete that and set a new one. All right, we'll turn that off. And see how that feels. That's better. Still not quite right. Actually, why didn't I notice that before? This is not right. That position of this leg under there is not correct. Although it could also be from, it's the root. The root is not working. That is moving too far forward. Because if you watch in the reference right here, it kind of stops and spins on itself. It's not moving off of my mouse. It's spinning, but it's not moving off of the mouse. But in my animation, it is moving. So we got to fix that. So I'll set a key there. And then actually we just want to kind of ease, I'm going to use Animbot again to ease back towards the previous thing. And this one as well. Ease back. Oops, wrong thing selected. Ease back. There. And now those legs feel a lot better. Okay, moving on to knees. All right, let's see what we can do. I forget if this has the knee roll, and it also has the knee IK, or pull vector. And so it looks like I already did some things on the pull vector, so I'll just keep going with that. This is moving too far, too fast. That is too far. Gotta be just bent like that. This one is probably not that. Yeah, from this angle, I can tell it's kind of bent in towards him. Here, it's unclear whether it's bent out away from his body or in. But here, from this view, I can tell it's bent in. Look at that and that. So it's bent in a little bit. And then here. Wait, which knee? Oh, I was looking at the wrong knee. They kind of cross each other. So this has to be bent in more. Probably like, oh, over here you can tell that. And then this, I want it to be from this view over there. Here she is way off balance. Now, is that a root problem or is that a foot problem? Looks like it's a foot problem. Actually, it's both. One is this foot. That's a problem. Oops. That is moving too far. As it spins. That's better. And then this foot. And I know I already fixed this one, but what I didn't do was check it in this view, which I should have, to make sure it was more like over there. So I'm going to do this again and this again and make sure that this comes back. That's better, more on balance. And then probably need to do a little bit on the root as well. Yes, this root needs to move this way a bit during that spin. And then once we move this knee, it's going to feel way more balanced. I'll make it bigger in this view so you can see. That feels way more balanced. Before, both of her feet were like that in this view. Oops, there. All right, it feels more balanced, but it doesn't have that same line, although this isn't the exact view that I want to be seeing that line. That's this one. It needs a little bit more lean. So I'll take this and undo what I just did, which is pull it back this way a little bit. That's better. Okay. All right, let's say this view. All right, we're getting somewhere. Let's throw in the arms, right? Let's throw in the arms because that's a complicated piece of it, and that's probably going to make it feel a lot more like the reference once we do that. And it'll make me feel like I'm making more progress, probably, than worrying about these foot pivots and stuff. Now, it should be clear that this is still very early in blocking. As we said, that this takes a long time. So let's see what we can do with arms. I'm going to pick one of them. I want to make sure that they are in the right setup where I forget how this rig works. Can I move? All right, so I think this is going to work out all right. No. So, okay, blend roundness, tweak visibility. What I want to make sure that I can do before I move forward, which I don't think it's really doing it, is it's not. Let's make sure that the other one is that I want to be able to make it so that if I move the shoulders, it doesn't change the position of the arms. Or rather, it doesn't change the orientation of the arms. So like, for example, let's say if I have the arm like this and I move the shoulder, I just want it to be doing that. But if I rotate the shoulder, I don't want it to do this to the arm. I just want to lift the shoulder or drop the shoulder without changing the arm too much and not forcing the arm to do that. But if it has to be that way, and I am not familiar with this rig enough to know exactly where or how I should set that up, then I need to make sure that I do the shoulders first. Because normally what I would do is I would animate the arm positions first and then take a pass at the shoulders and make them, raise up and shrug when they need to or drop when they need to, without really affecting the arm positions, or not really positions, rotations. But I don't think I have that control. If anybody knows clavicle joint controller, if anybody knows this rig, let me know if you have a secret about where to find these things, in case I just can't find it. I think I had turned off some stuff originally, I remember. Stuff that I didn't need visible. The spine. Those are the things for blocking. Those are the face controls. Those are, I think, all for the face. close. Is that just, yeah, just the close. Okay, so that's all right. Moving on. I will try to take a pass at the shoulders first. To avoid any difficulty later on. Now, that's the shoulder orbit control. That's the shoulder rotation control. All right, I'll use the shoulder rotation control. I'll make sure that this is raised. It is. All right. So here, it's looking at this one, it's way back. And up. And then here, it's also much further back. What position are we in? Object? Okay. It's back, but it's not quite as high. This is still really far back. It is cranked to its maximum back here. Here it's low. Wait. Oh no. Gimbal mode. That's what I want to see. To see what's actually happening behind the scenes there. Let's undo that. All right, so if I want to that one's not changing. All right, so they're a little gimbaled. It's okay. Then we'll go back to where I did not delete that. I'll keep those keys. Here it's, you know what? Screw it. We'll just go back down to object mode. I don't usually like that, but if it's already gimbaled and the axes are kind of crisscrossing each other, then so be it. Sometimes you just want to zero things out to know where defaults should be and then rework from there. So here I got myself a little confused. Things were going crazy. So I just want to zero it out to know where default should be and then reset from there into the pose I need it to be. And then here it's much more forward. Here it's up and back again. Here it's really low. I'm getting gimbaled again, so I'm just going to zero it out again. Here there's a specific drop in the shoulder. And then it starts to swing. There it goes up real high. And back. Set key to keep it there. So this does not have any keys on it, so I can easily move it away and see what's going on there. All right, so that shoulder is up. And then again, move this, see what we're dealing with. It is definitely uncomfortable for me to animate just the shoulders first. I would much rather animate the arms first, but I'm just not familiar enough with this rig. I'm sure there's a way to get what I'm looking for. Ooh, I could use locators. Right? Oh. And I see someone actually said that. Perfect. Great minds. Yes, I could constrain the arms to locators. That is true. The frame rate might take a hit. It's possible. That's really great advice. And that's something that I talked about in the part one, actually, was using locators to kind of attach world locators to different body parts, which is something that I'll hopefully do a little later to clean things up even further. Let's take a pass at the arms first, and then if I need to, I can do that to continue to change the shoulders. All right. So let's just dive into it here. Right off the bat, we're going crazy with the arms, making this an intense amount of energy. I'm not going to do the hands, but I will do the palms. I'm going to do the fingers. I mean, I'm not going to do the fingers at the moment, but I'll do the palms. Actually, let's turn this into gimbal. And turn off things in here because I'm not really selecting things from here. I want to view them here. Okay. So we need a little bit more bend in that wrist coming from there. That. Okay. Then moving on. Oh man, that's so cool. There's so much torque and tension in this. I love it. All right, so let's pull this like that. This is going to be really collapsed and compressed down. And the wrist can kind of stay in the same spot. Then so cool. There's so much energy flowing through that arm. I want to collapse this more. We're going to twist this and pull it back. That is really broken. That is really broken. So let's fix that. We're going to pull that out a little bit in a couple different ways. It also could be coming from the shoulder. The shoulder could be really overcranked. You know what? It's good news. I'm not losing too much of my rotation by rotating the shoulder in this direction. But I just noticed here where I was moving, I have the shoulder keys set on different keys than the arm. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for me. I'm fine with that. But I noticed that going into here, I was starting to key the shoulder at the same key I keyed the arms, which is not the same key I keyed the shoulders at. Not the same frame I keyed the shoulders at. So I undid that and moved back and then moved the shoulder so that it stays on that key. So I'm not trying necessarily to get them all lined up with this. Man, that is really cranked, isn't it? The same keys or the same frames keyed. It's okay with me that they're on different frames. Wait, what am I trying to do here? This has to come way down. Rotate this out. And this is the reason why I like to use gimbal mode, because I want to see which axes I'm moving where. And so this red one, if I rotate an X, it is not moving the rotate Z or rotate Y axis. You see that? But if I rotate this one, the others do move. So that's what's really happening under the scenes in Maya, like under the hood. And so that's important to me to know, because when I go clean it up, I want to know which pieces I'm moving, and I want to know that I'm not causing some sort of major errors and getting into gimbal problems. So like a gimbal problem, if you don't know, would be like if it gets like this, where X and Y now do the exact same thing. That's where it's gimbal locked. So I'm just making sure, kind of monitoring what's going on so that I'm avoiding that issue. But I do need to get her shoulder much further down if possible, or just get, no, that's actually kind of working. Trying to get her elbow more behind her and low. And I also twisted her arm too far out. We want to keep it closer to the hip a little bit, but her elbow needs to be really far back and down, so like that. And then here, actually, you know what? Let's look at it in here. This line is too high. Looking at it over here, I want to drop this down a little bit. Oops. Yeah. That's better. And then when we get to, let's say here, and this needs to untwist. Let's go back to 0. Where's default? Because I want her elbow, I want to pay attention to which direction the elbow is supposed to be bending here. And then that will help me determine which way the wrist has to twist, because I'm not quite sure at this moment if the wrist position is because her upper arm is doing that and changing where the elbow position is, or if it's her wrist motion. And so I'm just trying to take note of where the elbow is bending or which direction the elbow is bending in order to get there.
Jacob, this kind of leans into a question that JV Animation just asked of how do you plan to avoid a gimbal lock and which controls would change the rotation orders on the arm?
Great question. So there, like, for one, on this rig, I think there is a global arm mover. So I put that into position first. So like if it's rigged like this, and then you put the arms down with the normal upper arm control, you're already going to be in gimbal lock, depending on which axis it is. And you can change the rotation order on some rigs, which is cool. On this one, it looks like you can. The rotate order is keyable. So either you want to change the rotate order so that it doesn't immediately gimbal it, or you use a rig that has that ability to position the arms first before you start moving things off their axes. And then being aware of, like, if you're going from, let's say, this position, it's hard to come up with an example. If you're going from, I guess, here to here, no, here to here. All right, so if you're doing this to this, I would take care to make sure that I am moving this down first and then rotating this over, as opposed to different ways you could do it where you end up accidentally like doing this in the middle. Even though you don't know that yet, but when you press play, it will do that in the middle because you're kind of flipping over the axes because it tries to do this first and then this and then come back or something like that. It's hard to come up with an example off the top of my head, but I am trying to pay attention of, like, I want to make sure I use this axis first because that's the major one, and then I'll use this one after that because that's the sub axis, because that's a twist. Anytime that it's a twist is usually the lowest in the chain. Is that the idea there? Hopefully that helps. So I'm going to turn this back and out then. All right. And then this is so cool. Love everything about this. All right. The dance, I mean. I love the dance. Let's make this. And then angle back. Now it looks like I'm going to have, you know what? Crap. I didn't do the upper chest. That's clear. There's no keys on this, which means, see this arc that he's got in his spine? I haven't put that in there yet, which means I skipped a part because I forgot where I ended up after part 1. But that means I'm going to have to do this, which is going to change all the arm positions. So I'm definitely going to use that locator trick. But I'm going to move forward with the arms thing first before I go back and do the chest. I just got too excited about adding the arms in and moved forward before I should have. I probably should have, if I had remembered what I had done before, would have done the spine first, the whole way through, including the chest. Now, when you get to the head or the arms, either one, but they don't affect each other. The head position isn't going to affect the arm position, so I could have done either one after that. But the chest position is going to affect the arm position, so I should have done that first. Whoops, that's okay. We'll fix it. All right, then let's see. Like looking from this view, the arm should be behind. Oops, it's rotating behind little lower. And then key. Nope. All right, and then this comes out. There's an example. Okay, so for the gimbal thing, I know I got to get the arm out here, right? Up here. So should I do this or should I do this? And so that's a case where I'm watching what I'm doing. I don't want to do this first because now I have no axis that allows me to get it up there. There is no clean one to rotate up, right? And it also is starting to get the Y and X pretty close to each other. So instead, I want to make sure I use Y first, and then I'm going to move Z down. So now I still have axes that are kind of all in separate directions. And that's what I would do differently on that one to make sure that I would not hit gimbal lock. Can you just, I see this question here, can you just change the orientation of the arms so the chest doesn't affect it as much? That's what I was looking for before. I couldn't find it. There probably somewhere in this rig is a follow space, is what it's called. Do the arms follow the chest or follow the root or follow the shoulder? Right now they feel like they're following the shoulder. So any movement on the shoulder, the rotations go into the arm. And I would prefer if they followed the chest or followed the root. But I'm not sure exactly where that setting is. And I don't want to waste your guys' time by trying to find it. And some rigs might not have it. So I'll do a different method anyway so that it helps more people. The simplest version would be, yes, change the follow space of the arms so that they don't get affected by the position of the chest. All right, so probably want to have this here. Why is this rotated? Why does that feel like it's bent? It should not be bent. Maybe her arms were modeled in a bent pose. I want it to be straight. Let's go back here. Is this bent? It is bent. I want it straight. Okay. Then let's go back to the upper arm. And I want this to be, oh, it's too far forward. It's got to be back more like that. Palm, it's going to be that way. Oops. Now looking at the way the elbow bends, it also should be probably twisted like this. And then it's going to come forward like that. Still straight, still with a lot of tension. There's even more tension in the fingers. I'm not getting there yet, but man, there's so much tension in those fingers. It's really cool. Make sure I key all of those. And then now it pulls forward. Oops, I have all three selected. Don't want to do that. I just want to bend this one. Oh, that is gimbaling them. See? So I'm in trouble here. I guess I can do this and then this, but now they're gimbaled again in a different way. So no matter what, I'm hitting a gimbal here unless I have that orbit, which is probably this one. But it's going to happen. So I'm going to see, I'm aware that it's happening, and I'm going to try to see what happens and how I can. So I switched into object mode to move it down a little bit. What's happening in between now? It's kind of working. It's not flipping around. It's kind of going to be okay. But I'm aware of it, and I'm going to fix it later if something happens. What I'll do is more locators. The eventual like polish phase I'll probably have on ones anyway, baked down, and as long as this isn't like super flipping, then it should be okay. And what I'll do is, what I would tend to do is, if it gets into a gimbal lock situation, which the amount that these arms are moving, which arms can kind of move in like 360 degrees, so there, it's possible that you can, it's impossible to always avoid gimbal lock unless you have multiple layers of controls, and I'm not going to get into that at the moment. But what I would do is use a locator and then bake it down, and then I would bake the rotate order to be different. So I would use a rotate order switching tool that basically makes it so it keeps the exact same positions but changes the rotate order. And as long as you're on ones, a key every single frame, then it doesn't really matter that you've switched the rotation order, except for that then you can clean up those specific curves of that exact rotation later. But that's getting way ahead of ourselves. And right now, let's just get to the end of this moment with the arms and see what we can do. Let's see how bad this gimbal turns out to be. Okay, we're getting some flipping in here. Well, not necessarily flipping, but arcs that are undesirable as it's doing this thing. For the moment, I'm going to leave it like that. But we need to start bending this. This needs to come back. And it's too high, right? Yeah, like that. And here we're dropping all the energy from the arm. I want to try to get it back into, yes, we can start to get it back into more of the expected rotation order a little bit. Not rotation order, out of gimbal, basically. It's not quite there yet, though. And then back to starting to unfold the arm. Watching which way the elbow is bending in there. I know it's almost straight. I'm trying to look at where like the elbow pit is, so I can tell which way it's supposed to bend, even on the straight arm. And then here, we're going to crank that wrist back. We're going to get this straight and get this. Is this bent to more than one axis? It is bent to more than one axis. I want to bend the elbow in more than one axis. Just want it in Z. Although that is another way that you could avoid the appearance of gimbal lock, is cheating with that. I'm not going to do that at the moment. Okay. This has to be like way behind. Looking at this view now. And then up. I'm watching kind of all the views to get a feel for that angle. Now we gotta bend the elbow again. We gotta lift this up. We gotta twist it. Bend this more. Where do I want to go here? I need to make it like that. Yes. And then this needs more tension, needs to be bent a little bit more, and the forearm, no, sorry, the upper arm needs to be a little higher. More like that. But then this is more like that. I'm gonna grab all of them and set a key again. And then, oh, this is cool. How that swoops down in front of her. There's another case. I might want to make sure I do this and then that for that gimbal stuff. Yeah, that's going to be what I need. I'm going to need another key in there, though. And then here, I'm going to bend this more. And then straighten it out. As we kind of push that down. Okay. And then where does this end up? That swings way out in front and around and then back. All right, should we see what it looks like? It seems so unimpressive, right? Just spent so long doing that, and now, great, the arm is moving a little bit. Yay. It feels like we barely got anywhere, but I know we made progress. Okay. So now, let's go on to that locator thing so I can do the chest. We'll leave the other arm as it is right now. And gonna do the locator real fast. What I'm gonna do is attach a locator that will follow the shoulder but not inherit the motion. So I talked a little bit about this in part 1. I remember talking about that, about attaching like a world space locator. So you would make a locator, then bake it onto the controller to follow the controller. Then you delete the parenting, and then you switch it so that you parent the controller to the locator. And the locator also then has to follow the shoulder. But I'm going to use a quick tool to do all of that to save us some time. The concept is all there. I'm going to use a tool that Agora has that does that, but faster. It's nothing secret. It's the exact process I just described. It just does it with the click of a button instead of me doing it with many button clicks. And I think you can find one called EV Labs that does the same thing. Ours is faster. Anyway, so I will select this, and I want to do rotation only. Okay. And hopefully, okay. So now basically what it does, it made a locator that follows, or that is controlling the arm. So if I move the arm, it's not going to work anymore. I have to move the locator. This locator itself is now controlling the arm, but yes, the shoulder position no longer affects the rotation of the arm. So I'm not going to destroy all my arm poses. And same thing with the chest. So animating the chest is no longer going to destroy those arm poses. Okay, now let's do a speed round with the chest so that I can make that look a little bit better and more convincing and connect all those pieces. I'm going to zoom into here, just look at this view for the moment, and I'm going to see if this can make it faster. I'll see if I can be faster by doing it just one view and then checking it in another view instead. So I'll make sure I'm in gimbal mode actually for the chest too, but I'm going to go like that. I'm going to zoom in and see what these curves are doing. Okay. So to kind of reiterate what I was saying last time about how I'm picking the keys that I'm using or which frames, is that I am just trying to look at major changes of direction and make sure that those are keyed. Okay, that's way more twists, I think. But this has to be more like that. Oops, this key has to be more like that. Yeah. Major changes of direction, and that's, I just want to key it in place at like before it does a big move or when it does a big move. And that's kind of what I'm thinking when I go into this. All right, so this is a cool moment where, watch the spine here. It's like a complete reversal right here. It's a reverse C shape, and then it changes the other direction. So that is a complicated move to not make look CG, but it's a really complex relationship between the forward motion or backward motion of the root and the spine itself, so that it doesn't feel like locked in space or doing this weird thing. I don't know if I've set up the root motion effectively to get this feeling. I didn't, not yet. I mean, it's still very rough, but it would have been nice if that just happened to work out so perfectly that we got that really cool move automatically. It's not quite there yet, but it's close-ish. Obviously, it's going to take some cleanup anyway. Now this is bending this way. It's kind of more relaxed. Actually, what is 0? 0, just to see. Twisting, rotating back this way. Rotating back, twisting. Yeah, definitely should have done this first. This adds so much torque, energy, feeling to what's happening. All right, so this is a confusing one because the neck and the head are snapping forward. So it goes from like chin all the way in the air to chin against his chest. Those are really snapping forward, but his spine is still in a reverse C shape. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by all that momentum coming forward. It's not reversing his spine. At least at the moment from this view, I don't think it is. He's keeping his spine in a reverse C shape despite all that forward thrust coming from his neck. So it's not running through his whole spine. It is keeping that C. And I know I'm missing some left and right torque here. So I got to figure that out. Where's this? Oh, okay. I actually want to delay this. So his hips are facing directly away from us, but his chest is facing kind of straight left. So that's a moment of the torque, meaning the difference between the hips and the chest rotations, which way they're facing. So when they're facing the same direction, there's no torque in the spine. When they're facing different directions, there's a lot of torque, a lot of energy that's there. And so just watching for that difference and when they line up and when they are opposite each other or when those things happen to work together or apart. So here is also really C-shaped. Okay. Now, let's go to this view. And just double check some of the spine stuff. Okay, so here, moving the spine into that C shape, reverse C shape, has really changed the position of her chest, which means what I need to be doing there is kind of counter animating with the root. Yeah, closer to that. See how it kept her chest position at the same spot, even though her spine shape is changing? That'll be important. Okay. Here, there's a lot of bend. Did I get that? Kind of got that, but I might need to bend her root a little bit more. All right, let's see what this looks like. Cool. We're getting somewhere. Let's leave that where it is and jump to the head and neck. Okay. All right. Let's save, because that sounds like a good idea. Let's save as a new version. Wait, save your work. I've been burned many times with my own failure to save and lost a lot of work. Then I want a similar setup to what I talked about with the arm and the shoulder with the neck and the head. So when I move the neck, I don't want it to reposition the head, usually. I don't want it to, like moving the neck, I don't want it to do that. I want it to do that. So the head stays where I pointed. And I might take a pass at the head before I take a pass at the neck in this case, just because it might be easier to see as head direction changes. And then once the head is doing the right thing, it'll be easier to see where the neck needs to move. I don't know what the setup is like here. That neck moves. They both move the head. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing I did with the arm. I'm going to animate this first. And then I'm going to put it on the locator and then animate the neck. Okay, save a second time just in case. Not a bad idea, but I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to be risky here. Not save a second time. All right. So if we assume that the first pose is kind of, let's assume previous Jacob put the first pose in the right spot. I don't know why I would trust my former self like that. It seems like a bad idea. But I'm going to take this off of wireframe mode so I can actually see the face. Would it be helpful to do that? That might be helpful. Let's do that so I can see. It should not be bent that far. It's more like that. Okay. Oh, you know what? Maybe it is easier to use the neck first because it's translating the head so far in its current method. I mean, now see this how this line is really broken. We've got this big spine curve, and then it just moves up like this, and then we got the head curve. Like, they are not connected. These curves do not flow. This is not a good flow. But that's why eventually I will go in and do this and make the neck flow more between them, but without moving the head position. So I just want to start with the head rotation. Okay, so there's a big shift looking at this one, like where the chin is pointing. She's got this huge headdress thing on, of course, so that's kind of getting in the way of things, but we'll pretend like it doesn't exist. Still got to be tilted back, tilted this way. And yeah, those, it's actually really bothering me that those lines are so bad of like the spine, this one, the spine into the head. They're not working well together. We'll fix it. We'll get there. I know we'll get there. All right. This, and then we know that it's got to be more straight up and down like that, more twisted like this. All right, so here's a case where watching this, the head, oops, head here, is a really clear example of the changes of direction and where I would want to key stuff. So I'm doing this kind of rapid fire in my brain all the time, but here's a clear example I can show you, is that the head is, actually this isn't far enough back. Watching this view, the head rotates down. It kind of pauses here facing forward, right? So I keyed it here, and then now it throws itself way down, but not yet. So if I just put a key here and a key here, it's going to, in my animation, throw the head way down too soon. So here, I actually wanted to key there first. So back up, here's what I would do. I see that it pauses and then it throws the head down. So I'm going to set a key right here, right before the head gets thrown down. And so now I'm building in that little layer, that little pause of what I want to see happen, is that it's going to wait until the chest gets thrown back before the head gets thrown down. So that's the type of decision making that I'm doing on these things. That's why I flip back and forth, constantly looking ahead to what's next in the reference, then going back to set a key, stuff like that. And then here, kind of lifting up, and you know what? Let's move this away a little bit so I can see down here. Because I gotta do this and this. Oh,
Jacob,
yeah.
JV Animation is asking, so are you looking for change in speed and direction?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. Yep. Change in speed and direction, whether it's rotation or translation or whatever it is. I'm looking for those changes so that I can key them in there to get a rough pass at what this is going to look like. Now it's still going to be a little clicky. It's still going to be rough and stuff, but that's when I will then start doing polish and getting into the refining all the little arcs and the movements and the little bits of weight and making things feel heavy. We're getting close to the end of the clip we're animating. I will usually do this like doing a pass on a body part through the whole section of what I'm focused on, just like this. I'm kind of watching all three reference views as I figure out which poses or which direction I need to key the head on a given frame. And there's going to be some mistakes in here. I am aware of that. I am anticipating that. And I am prepared to clean them up later. But I want to get a real good pass at the general mechanics and performance. It might not feel super heavy. It might be a little bit, it's going to be a lot clicky. It's going to be a little jagged, but it's, I mean, in total, I've worked on this shot now. What time is it? For including part one, like an hour and or like 2 hours. And I would have enough here that I could show the director or animation supervisor the intent. You could turn off the reference and just show the animation, and they would understand the general pacing, the timing, the ideas. Now, this is an extra complicated motion that we're doing here. So in a more understandable motion that is not a really interesting and intricate and crazy dance, more like maybe walking and sitting down or delivering a line or something, we'd have an even clearer idea after this much time of what the intent is, what the timing, the pacing, the performance ideas are. And so that would be my goal, is to get a lot of feedback early, with not so much work, to make sure I'm going in the right direction, to make sure things feel right to whoever's doing the approvals and whoever is looking for this stuff. Oops. So let's pause there on the head and put it into rotation only on baking the head out, and then I will see what I can do with the make that a little smaller. Make this a little smaller. The neck. Let's see what I can do with the neck. Okay. So like here, it throws the head way back, whereas the neck is actually preventing the head from going that far back. It's staying within the chest, kind of down here. Yeah, like that. Watching this view, that feels so much better. I'm missing a head roll, so I can go back in and put that in now if I want. Or I can wait. I'm going to wait and do the neck first. And now the neck is going to go back a lot. A lot. There's a lot of really extreme movement in this dance, which is very cool. And so this is why it's important that if I already set the head directions, I don't want them to change when I do this. I'm trying to get the flow of the body between the chest and the head. But if I had the head automatically follow the neck wherever it goes with rotations, meaning it starts to do this or do that when I rotate the neck, it's throwing it all off. Now, that doesn't mean this is the only way to do it. Other animators work that exact way I just showed, and it makes sense to them. It doesn't make sense to me. So work whatever way makes sense to you. Okay, I'm gonna fix this one because the head is not, it bugs me. All right, oops. Didn't mean to just move that camera. I hope I didn't move it off of the reference too much. Her neck actually grows as it moves forward. Right, like her neck length right there is very different than her neck length right there. So it could be because I'm preventing the head from doing, like if the head were to rotate down with it, it might not be as long. It could just be the deformation set up with how those things work together. But I'm going to be aware of it. I'm probably going to take a pass at translating the head to keep the neck length more consistent later. Whoa. There. I want to keep this down inside the chest a little bit more. Then it lifts up. And over. Then I'm going to key here before it really slides back. So now we've got much more of a flow from the spine. The spine is very broken, but from the spine into the head. It used to be here when I was posing out the head. There's no flow. Like those lines don't connect, right? This top. Hold on, just to point this out. So and now the flow of her spine is like this, then that, then that. We want something that's a little bit more like this, more fluid, cohesive. So if then we do that, look at that. Move this over. Feels much more flow from the through the whole spine, basically, but the hips, through the chest, through the neck, to the top of the head. It's all much more in line with each other to create a line of action, a flow. So that's why it was bugging me so much when I was doing the head without the neck, because it was breaking that. Like we had two separate pieces of flow that were, it's like we had this and we had this, and they were not lined up. And I just want to bring that down there. I really want to bring it down there, but we have that weird jog in the line. And that's why it was bugging me. I told you we'd get there. Fix it. Let's go back to multiple views so you can see what I'm doing. That's going to go way down in against her chest. Trying to go fast. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, it's on the way. Should we? I can keep going with some stuff. I'm gonna leave the other arm alone because it's just more of the same. You've seen me do that. So what I'll do is I'll start cleaning up some different stuff. Maybe I'll start with the root. And while I start cleaning stuff up, why don't we do some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. It sounds good, Jacob. Thanks. Yeah, nice work. It's. I think some people have been saying in chat it's just been really nice chilling out and watching you animate. So it's looking
Cool.
good.
I'm glad that
All
that
right.
is somewhat entertaining, at least. And I'm trying to talk about stuff as I do it, but I don't know if I'm making any coherent sense at all because it's hard to do both.
Yeah, you're doing really well, man. Okay, so I'll see how these look if I pull the questions up on the screen, but I
Okay.
don't want to take away from what you're doing either. So we have Jello9 that has asked, how long should a shot like this take in a professional studio to know you're doing okay on speed?
That is a layered question, a really good one, but a complicated question. Every production is going to have its own quota or expected speed, and then some shots are planned to go a little slower than that, and some shots are planned to go a little faster than that, so that the average turns out to be the quota. So it depends on the production, the budget, the schedule, all sorts of stuff like that, and hopefully a production manager would tell you exactly how long it would be expected to work on the shot. In this particular case, for this exact shot on the exact production it was for, I really don't remember, but my guess would be looking at it now, probably about uh, 5 days worth of work, maybe. So that would probably be about 2 or 3 days to block it, and then 2 days to polish it. There'd be a couple rounds of reviews in there. I think I did it a little faster than that. I don't remember exactly. I think I actually might have been asked this question about how long it took me to do this on part one, and if I gave you another answer, it'd probably be wildly different than the first one. I would trust the first one more because it was closer to the time that I had done it. Like we said, it feels like forever ago since part one, but I don't remember exactly how long it took. I would guess not more than 5 days for this shot. Um, I hope that
Awesome,
helps. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, so the next one, and this has been a little conversation that's been happening in the chat from Dash
Okay.
Studios. Do you agree that everything is a bouncing ball?
Yes, I do. That's the way I look
Okay.
at it a lot. Most obviously to me, the hips, the root is a bouncing ball, and so if I were to go in and clean up the root right now, I would look at it that way. I would ignore everything else, kind of, and look at the motion of the hips as like its own bouncing ball. Now, that doesn't mean that there's always going to be a impact and a bounce off. It's not like it's actually bounding, but everything gets to have the same attention and care that you might put into a ball bounce, and it can be that cool and smooth through the frame. A great example of that is the chest. So, for example, if we were to take the actions of the chest, right now, the chest itself is inheriting all the motion from the root. And this is a really cool example of this. So, this graph shows me the translations of the chest and the rotations of the chest. Translations are currently 0. So that's not actually helpful because that's not showing me what it's doing through the frame. But if I do the locator trick and I put a world space locator on it, which I'll do that right now, in fact, let me bake every frame because then you'll be able to see it in the graph of translation and rotation for the chest. This is what it's actually doing in translating through the screen. Now, whether it's a perspective camera or the shot cam or whatever it is, this is the path that the chest is taking through the scene. And so if I were to move it like this, you can see it's moving just the chest, right? But that allows me to then find all these little problems. Like here, the chest is perfectly still in translate Y for 2 frames. Would I do that with a bouncing ball? Probably not. I'd probably make it like this. And so now that smooths that out. And that's probably way too fast of a recoil. We're going to soften that because it's heavy. And I'm going to do this and soften these things. And this actually, I thought it was going to be a lot worse than this. Sometimes you'll see some really obvious jagged problems. Here's a problem. I probably wouldn't expect the chest to stop like that. Let's see what this is doing. It's not. So see how like this graph, it just stops and it like over one frame, it's coming in real fast, stops and goes backwards. That's not what I want it to do. I know already, without even looking at the reference, probably, I know that I'm going to make it much calmer, softer to change direction. And now, well, the rotations are going kind of crazy. We can look at those too. But that sort of cleanup is a pass that I'll take. Not yet. I would want to do the root first. But that, looking at that as its own bouncing ball, look at the chest as its own bouncing ball moving through the frame. Can it be kind of smoothed out a little bit and not hit all those walls that are being caused by the root? The root is impacting that. It is inheriting all the motion from the root. And so I would definitely do this to make everything a bouncing ball. Same thing with the head. The head is going to be its own kind of bouncing ball. Again, that just means giving it the attention and care of how it moves through the frame. It doesn't mean that it's always bouncing off the chest like a bouncing ball, if that helps. Great question.
Yeah, for sure.
What's next?
Thank you. Okay, next we have from Film Nutcase. Between mocap and what you're doing, on average, which is faster?
Great question. They achieve different end results to me. We had very briefly considered, should we do motion capture for this sort of thing on this project? And immediately we knew no, for a number of reasons. First, artistically, we wanted it to be through the lens of an artist instead of using part of the machine. But secondly, and in answer to your question, honestly, to get the same end result that we were after, it probably would have taken the same amount of time or more if we actually had motion capture data from this dancer. If we had the data and put it on the rig of this dancer doing this thing, in order to get the result we wanted, which is kind of like seen through the eyes of an artist and cleaned up and smoothed out and adding some artistic flair here and there, it would have taken the same amount of time. But it does make things a lot faster for, like, I don't know, Marvel movies, for example. Things that are live action with CG characters. The mocap is a great start, and it also helps for a number of things, like actually being on set to shoot with actors so that they have something to respond to and interact with and emote from. But those things will help. So, which is faster depends on the end result. For what we were doing in this, it'd be kind of slower or the same speed. And then if for a live action VFX sort of thing, it's usually faster. But then, like, everything gets in the way too, and performance ideas change, and the director changes his mind about what he wants to put there, and then you end up rekeying it by hand anyway, in some cases. So it's a tool. Basically, it's a tool to help things when it's appropriate, and it's an awesome tool when it's appropriate. So I hope that helps.
For sure. Yeah, it's been plenty of times I've just blown away the mocap and gone to key animating.
Yep.
In fact, there's a story of someone that was working on Pirates of the Caribbean had mocap data of background characters climbing up one of the rope ladders, and he ended up doing it keyframed as well. He cleaned up the mocap, animated it from scratch, and asked his supervisor which one he thought looked better, and it was the keyframed animation. So that's what they ended up keeping in. Okay.
That there's a lot of truth to that. I think animators know what looks good because they study the motion. Just because it comes from the data doesn't mean that it looks the best. It might mean that's what the data captured on that moment, on that time, but that doesn't mean that it's going to look the best or have the most energy or have the most impact for the audience in the best way. So go animation.
Yeah. Okay, this is a nice little simple one. What's the pink slider thing you do in Animbot? Do you know?
This thing?
Yeah, I'm going to say that one.
Blend to mirror. So I think if you set up the mirror table, so like let's say arm to arm, I think if you were to blend to mirror, it would make the arm you've selected blend closer to the pose that the other arm is doing. I think.
Yep.
I think.
Yep. Yeah. Have to look up the Animbot instructions for that one.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to look at, while you give me another one, I'm going to look at cleaning up, let's say, the root here.
Okay.
And I'm gonna just real quick describe what I'm doing. Is I'm not gonna care anymore about keeping everything on the same frame. Before I had have keys set for all 3 translations on the same frame. Doesn't matter to me anymore. In fact, I'm going to get better arcs if I don't have like the change of direction happening on the same frame. So right here, translate Z and translate Y are both changing direction on the same frame. X is not. But Y and Z are changing direction on the same frame here, and they're changing direction on the same frame here. That's going to cause a V in the path because they're the highest point of each of them changing at the same time. If I were to just blindly do that, now I'm going to get an arc. I'll get more of an arc out of the Y direction and the Z direction combined because they're not changing direction at the same frame. I'm not going to blindly do it. I'm going to make decisions about where I want which thing to lead or follow, but that is the concept. So I'm going to go through that while you give me another question if there's more.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one from Jallo9. If a rig is really bad and it's hard to work with, can you send it back down the line and ask them to fix it?
Everything is possible. It totally depends on the production, the work environment, the studio, the amount of resources, the schedule, and the budget. So the answer is yes, but it depends. So I've worked at DreamWorks for a number of years. If the rig was awful, or it which was rarely the case, but if it just didn't function the way we needed, or if it was super slow, absolutely that would be redone or fixed. Found the bug and fixed it so that we could animate more effectively. But also, there's a variable to how much is too much. Like, is it something that you can kind of work around? Then you'd probably work around it. Or is it like what we call a P1, priority 1? This has to change or we're screwed. They'd do it. I've worked on a couple projects in contrast to that where we received rigs from a different place and they were not conducive to good animation environments. They were super slow. They needed a lot of fixing, and there was no budget on their side left to do it. So I think a couple people on our side just kind of quickly tried to change things and make it better because it was so impossible to work with. Short answer,
Awesome.
yes, get it fixed.
Okay. Let's see, what do we have here? Pepin Papillo. Okay. Now, okay, so I'm guessing this is meant to be, could you use linear or step work to not trigger gimbals?
No.
Okay.
In fact, that would, especially stepped, will deceive you into thinking there's no gimbal problem when there is. And as soon as you hit spline, then you'll see that it like flips around and does something weird, but you never knew it was going to happen because you were in stepped. It's linear and stepped aren't changing where the keys are located. Like if the keys do this, that's a Euler problem. And it might work itself out if this is the case. However, if you have all of this, then it might not be so easy. Anyway, the keys still exist in those locations. It's just stepped and linear are just changing the path of the curve between them. But the problem is that the keys are in those wildly different places. That's the problem. And so the interpolation is not going to change it. With one exception, if your final product isn't stepped, then it doesn't matter. So like for Spider-Verse, if they had gimbal problems across a stepped key that is a wildly different pose, but it gimbals in between, but you never see that frame because it's just stepped, that's fine. Probably. Assuming motion blur didn't pick up the subframes, but it shouldn't have in stepped. Good question.
Awesome. Okay, this is a follow-up on the bad rig question.
Okay.
So from Michael Askew, what are some tools or tricks you have used to work around a bad rig? Quotation, bad rig.
Right. Ooh, interesting. Well, like I wouldn't call this one bad, but this is a good example of it didn't have the tools I needed. I wanted the arms to not move when I moved the chest, so I used the locator thing instead of sending it back to rigging and say like add the follow space switches because I need to be able to have the arms follow the chest instead of the shoulder. Um, Instead, I just found an animation trick around it, is using that locator to work around the problem I had. I can't think of any more examples off the top of my head.
No worries. Awesome. Okay, we've done that one. Okay, so Began Chiz asks, do you use translations of IK spine while posing a character? I feel like it'll probably get counter animations with the COG in the polish stage.
So yes and no. I don't use I don't use IK spine translate on the chest to position the character. In this case, you saw that in order to move the chest over here, I was taking the cog and rotating it. That's the way I like to work. And then, as you saw, I use the locator to place it on the chest and then clean up the translations and smooth them out. That is using very minute amounts of translation of the IK chest. So yes and no. I use it for polish in order to make those arcs smooth and make the chest feel heavy, but I don't use it for posing. So there'll be little tiny adjustments in order to track the bouncing ballness of it. And then, but to actually position it with the pose, I'm using the cog to rotate from the base. That doesn't mean it's the right way. I know plenty of animators that would prefer to translate the IK chest and then shape the spine in between. Excuse me. But to each their own, right? As long as you know what you're doing and the end result works, then it doesn't matter how you got there. But personally, I do not pose with the IK chest.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so EGH Dig Dug, love Dig Dug. I used to
Nice.
play that game a lot. Asks, why don't you use the Euler filter to fix the gimbal?
So like I kind of already touched on that one, but when there is a flipping that happens with some of those things, it will solve that. A lot of times it won't. And if you are not smart about how you pose things, it doesn't mean it's going to fix it. If you have the one flip in between, which I know was my example, if you flip it in between as it goes between those things, the filter might solve that. However, if you, let's say you get over to this pose and then you want to have a little bit of acting stuff over here, and you want to be doing this, pushing buttons or whatever. I don't know, they're in a spaceship and they're pushing buttons over here, so you got to control this arm in a lot of different ways, and you're gimbaled, you're totally screwed. You're not going to be able to clean up that motion. Then the Euler filter is not going to fix that at all. It'll fix the flip in between to get there, but you're still going to be screwed in this position because you don't have the axes you need in order to move things the way you need to. Now, this might be a lame example, but there's lots of times where I've hit that sort of stuff where I need to have some acting and some little specific motions in there, but I don't have the axes available to me. And so that's why I'm cautious of how I get to a new pose, to make sure I have those axes available to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this is the last one that we have in the backlog,
Okay.
and it's from It's Animator, and they just ask, it seems like you're copying match moving the concept or the reference, which is pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not always the case. On this particular one, the director worked with these actors and dancers to get the performance he wanted. And so our goal is to capture that performance in many different ways, but it's essentially the essence of the performance is the key. And so if we're deviating too much, then we're not really staying true to what the idea is. In a lot of other cases, in animated feature films, you shoot reference of yourself acting or other people acting, and you kind of want some of the ideas in there, but you're not trying to stay true exactly to that exact performance. The things will change along the way. New ideas will come in, or timing will change and stuff like that. But this is the reference the director wanted. This is the performance that he chose. And that's what we're going to stick with. That's what we want to get the essence of onto the characters. And so
Awesome.
that's what we're after. Yeah.
Beautiful. Great. That's it.
Awesome. I'm going to keep going for a couple more minutes. If there are more questions, throw them out there.
Okay, it looks like
Please.
we did actually just have one come in.
Okay.
Let me pull it up here. Okay. So this one is from Double ZR Tap. What's a good way to get appealing arcs or motions? Do you just feel it?
Great question. Yes, I think I do. I think a lot of it comes just down to feeling out what makes sense to you. Um, so I guess in some cases, a lot of it's driven by weight. Like I know in this case, for this exact thing I'm looking at, I know that the weight has to come to screen left here and then droop down. There's a nice little arc drooping onto the the feet there. So I'm gonna try to build that in. When it comes to like, I don't know, let's say a more cartoony character bouncing around the screen. Characters like boom, 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 and that fun timing or those fun arcs or things like that. I will literally just get in front of the camera and do that with my hand. I'll go boom, 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 and figure out what either the arc is or the timing or what with my hand, because that you can have a lot of fun stuff and you can move a lot faster than if you were to use your actual body. So if it's cartoonier, I'll use my hand a lot of times to figure out the major path, timing, action, arcs, things like that to get the entertainment out of the motion. There's a lot of more detail that goes into it after that, but I'll start with, if it has to be like a big broad motion, with the timing of the hand motion. It's really easy to kind of coordinate that. I hope that helps. I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but kind of feel it out and shoot reference in my hand if that helps me.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. There. See, I added that little dip to the right, or sorry, to the left, or down in the graph. And you can feel that weight come down onto that foot, swing forward, create a little arc. That works. Okay, that direction. So now I'm balancing out. I'm watching closely on the reference, but I'm not trying to like, I'm not rotoscoping it. Um, if that's a word that people are wondering about, I'm not rotoscoping it. I'm not trying to figure out exactly every single frame. Move it a little bit here, a few pixels there. I'm watching the feeling of it. And so like in this case, I'm watching up here to get the kind of the feeling of where the accelerations and the pauses are. And I'm trying to get a feeling of that in the character. And so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to have the same feeling. And so sometimes what I'll do is, I might have mentioned this in part one as well, but I'm kind of like unfocusing my eyes. If you've ever seen those like old things where you have to like unfocus your eyes and you see a sailboat in a mixture of lots of colors. It's like a weird looking picture, but if you kind of cross your eyes or unfocus your eyes, then you see a different picture. I'm probably dating myself a lot. I was alive when those things were popular, like in the 90s. But that's what I'm kind of doing, is unfocusing my eyes. I want to get the sense of these blobs moving around, and I get the sense of the timing of those blobs. And so like they're the chest kind of going bum 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 or whatever. That bum 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 is a feeling I want to recreate. I'm not looking at every line exactly. I'm not trying to match the pixels, but I'm trying to get that amorphous blob bum 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 to feel like the character is doing bum bum bum, and that timing and that feeling. And so it's not necessarily about the exact detail of how many pixels or anything like that. It's about the feeling, the essence that I get from that amorphous blob in my unfocused, blurry vision. Um, so I'm trying to eliminate the details of the wrinkles in the shirt or whatever else. I'm just looking at the feeling, I guess, and trying to get a similar feeling on my character.
Yeah, the Magic Eye images. I was there.
Magic Eye, that's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I posted a link in the chat for anyone that wants to give it a shot. They're a lot of fun.
If they want to have a look into the past.
Yeah, exactly. Man, the 90s. Okay,
All right, we're
Nabi
getting some
Hobby is
weirdness in here.
asking, sorry if you've already explained, but can you show how you retime your keys?
Uh, I mean, in this process, I'm just dragging it, middle mouse drag around, and I am not precious about this stuff. I just start moving things and retiming. If I have to like do a director note of like make this whole part move a lot faster, then I'm probably gonna grab all the controllers, go down to the timeline, and squeeze a little bit. That's probably what I would do if it was a much more major thing. But for this process that I'm going through right now, I am just simply not precious about it, and I work a lot in the graph editor of moving stuff around a lot.
Awesome. I think this might be a follow-up. JV Animation asks, have you used the time editor before?
No, I know some people who have. I have not used the time editor. Don't feel like I have had the need for it, but I could be wrong. Maybe it does some things that I'm just not aware of how powerful it is, but I have not used it.
Okay. Began Chiz asks again, how do you plan out rhythm of your personal shot?
With the hand thing, the reference of my hand, finding the rhythms, finding the timing, the arcs, the little bum, 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 bum. There's even a shot on my old reel from one of the Trolls characters, Cooper, where he was playing harmonica, and it was a test that I did for before the film started, figuring out how he might be able to play the harmonica. He doesn't have hands; he has 4 legs. So how can we get him to play the harmonica with hands? So I just hid his hands beneath the frame, and I used a troll. I brought in a different troll and put his arms way up high and just stretched them up, and that's how he's holding the harmonica. It's not his legs in this test, but that's beside the point. For the reference, I literally just used my hand. It was how he's playing the harmonica, and sometimes he throws his head up, and sometimes he's dancing and doing like this. It was all found. The rhythms were found from shooting reference of my hand doing those actions and trying to figure out what might be an interesting dance or an interesting movement, or how he throws his head up and dances, and things like that. Which is it's online too. I don't know where it is, but it's on my Vimeo reel somewhere. But that's all just from shooting reference of my hand and trying to figure out where the interesting rhythms or fun arcs or fun motions are.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll try and find that. I believe you did a Q&A with Brent as well, and I think you spoke about that shot. So we'll have to dig that one up.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, so I cleaned up the root, kinda. It's accelerating too much right there, but it's working. Oh, that was when I was throwing random curves around to say I wasn't precious about it, and I broke it. That's much better. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, we have
And then
2 more.
Okay, let's do 2 more, and then we'll call it a night. This one
sounds good. Okay, so any tips for a novice on not getting overwhelmed by the graph editor? I feel like every time I pull it up, my eyes go crossed.
Sure. So that is scary. All this spaghetti is scary. Think of one thing at a time. That's what I do. Is like I'm just looking at one piece, and then I dial in even further. I'm only gonna look at the translates, and so then I have 3 pieces, and it's much less overwhelming. One thing at a time, and that's another reason that I like using the locator trick for the chest is that you can see exactly what it's doing. especially for like translate Y. This curve is exactly what it's doing in the shot. When the curve goes up, it goes up. When the curve goes down, it goes down. Translate Y is nice and easy, simple. Translate Y is just a visual representation of its motion in the screen. Translate Z and X are a little different because down is like left or right, so it's not as simple. But use the same concepts. Like you're just trying to read the motion. It's here it's accelerating, here it's slowing down. Then it accelerates again, then it slows down and changes direction. You can take it in pieces and just focus on one thing. Just focus on left, right, or focus on up, down until you start to get more comfortable with it. Don't look at all of the curves at once, though. Definitely overwhelming.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's animator, acting shot or lip sync or any other shots. Did you have a different checklist?
Interesting question. I don't necessarily switch up the checklist. I'm always trying to communicate with the audience and make it look as good as possible. That doesn't always mean look as visually interesting or stand out as much as possible, because sometimes the shot just has to do its job. Like a small, subtle reaction shot of a character just noticing something should not be huge and big, and it's probably not going to go on your demo reel. So it's not. Don't try to make that a giant like demo reel shot. It has to serve its purpose in the story. So sometimes it just has to be simple and small. But I still want to track the arcs. I still want to make it feel alive. I still want to make it look good. I still want to make it feel heavy. And so all of those things are still part of the checklist. But it's not always about being big or broad all the time. And so then lip sync, all of the things are related. Whether it's an action shot or a lip sync, there has to be weight. There has to be entertaining rhythms and motions, and it has to feel right. So those are like the main checklist things for me. It's not a checklist of like, does it go great on my demo reel, or does it have really crazy zany arcs? That's not what it is. It's about, does it feel right for the moment, and does it communicate with the audience? Does it feel heavy? I guess those are like the main things I'm looking for every shot, no matter what.
Yeah. And just kind of branching off of that, does that mean that for a simple, maybe a shot of a character looking at something or recognizing something, do you always work with video reference? Or do you ever
Great question.
have you ever had to not work with video reference?
That's a really great question. I feel like I always want to use video reference. The times where I've thought, you know what, I can do that without shooting reference, I always can't. And that's not to say that it's like that it's a crutch necessarily. I guess it's more like my own bar, is that I don't feel like I capture the right essence or find enough subtle nuance to make the shot entertaining and alive, unless I just turn on the camera and shoot it once or twice. It doesn't have to be an excessive amount of like figuring out exactly what needs to do, but even if it's the character just like turning and looking, I still am gonna shoot it once or twice to figure out what works. Why does it feel right for that moment? And I'm not necessarily going to bring the reference into Maya. I might not. I'm certainly not going to do this process, but I'm at least going to look at it and figure out what makes it feel alive and what makes it feel grounded or right for the moment. And then maybe I'll just throw it away after that and animate from there. But I'm almost never going in blind without looking at life first. I think that's the important part for me, is what is it about life that I need to capture in this animation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jacob. All right, let's put the view back. So, how are you doing with the cleanup? Yeah, good.
So I cleaned up the route. And if people are super interested, we can always do another one. Even if only like 5 people show up, I can do it for 5 people. But I can keep going if we want to do another one of these. But I got to cleaning up the route. and we have one arm in, but animation takes a long time, and this is hard. And this is a super complicated motion. So that's where we're at for now.
Beautiful. Do you mind if we maybe just get a quick playthrough one more time? And...
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
We'll get another view or two. So thank you everybody for being here, asking good questions, and just letting me make mistakes in front of you. So it's really fun to just animate in front of a lot of people who are judging your every move. It's super comforting and calming. I hope you had fun, and thank you for your time.